in a public standoff with the Packers, and we are officially less than a month away from the start of Packers training camp, which is July 27th. The big question, of course, is whether or not Rodgers will show up, and very quickly, because no one expects this to be a factor here. But, Jeff, I'm sure a lot of fans have seen somewhere online this week, July 2nd, this whole thing could be resolved by July 2nd. Very quickly, what is that about, and why is it so unlikely?
Well, Greeny, basically, players this year also have the opportunity to opt out due to COVID, something that we don't expect the number to be nearly as high as it was last year. There has been sort of this idea floated that Aaron Rodgers could opt out due to COVID and kind of just wiggle his way out of some financial situations this year and maybe save on some of that money. I'm told that will not happen, though. I'm told that's not a consideration for Aaron Rodgers and not something that he is even thinking about doing for that July 2nd deadline. So we can put that aside.
It would be binding, which is to say if he opted out, there's no opting back in. He would be making a decision this week that he's not playing football this year. There are financial ways in which it would be beneficial to him, but it seems so unlikely as to not be worth discussing anymore. So, Dominique, I find it fascinating. As we sit here, we got Tom Brady. He's on the shop. He's having the time of his life. He's singing Hamilton in a golf cart with James Corden. He's getting set to go play in this golf match with Phil Mickelson, who's like Mr. Laughs. He's like a late-night talk show host. In the meantime, Aaron Rodgers, he's holding out. He's angry. He's sort of, bitterly entrenched in this thing. He's going to play golf with Bryson DeChambeau, who is, a human embodiment of where fun goes to die. So, Nick, I'm trying to juxtapose these two guys right now, Rodgers and Brady, and it just seems like they're in very different places.
I mean, I don't even care what the question is. I just enjoy that tight 1 minute of comedy you just delivered right there. It was fantastic. But Aaron Rodgers did host Jeopardy, which I could say is him having fun. But compared to the shop, Jeopardy is boring compared to the shop, so I still think that Aaron Rodgers, you're right. Aaron Rodgers is kind of in a stuffy moment in his career, and he's probably looking at Tom Brady, seeing him at 43, having the time of his life. I think that could embolden Aaron Rodgers a little bit, recognizing that could be part of his future. He doesn't have to be this angry kind of confrontational guy who's doing physics equations with Bryson DeChambeau. He could be drunk throwing Super Bowl trophies across a river just like Tom Brady. So I think that if that requires him to hold out this year, he might be willing to do that.
I'm with you. And again, there's no disrespect intended. DeChambeau's personality is what it is, and Phil Mickelson is the human embodiment of being drunk and throwing the trophy from one boat to another on the river. So, Rob Ninkovich, what do you think?
I think Tom Brady's going to try and implement Phil on some avocado ice cream or the TB12 method or growing your own plants in your backyard. Listen, I think that Tom is having the time of his life right now, and Aaron Rodgers is probably looking at Tom like, man, he went to another team that was loaded and won a Super Bowl. I want to do that too. So, look, I think Tom's having the time of his life, and Aaron is looking at that and probably wants to go have the time of his life. So we'll see. Time will tell if Aaron Rodgers can go somewhere else and have the time of his life. But right now, I don't think he's having the time of his life.
Nick, final word.
Aaron Rodgers is kind of already on a team that's a little bit loaded. That's all.
Yeah.
Just that team is a Super Bowl caliber team right now.
Nick, you disagree with that?
Well, they went for a field goal instead of a touchdown. So
well, that's bad decision making. That has nothing to do with them being loaded.
Maybe that's why you don't want to play there. Just let you know about that one.
No risk it, no biscuit, right? Got to go to Tampa Bay. Everybody play with Bruce Arians and risk it and get them biscuits.
Yeah, and look
that right now. But at this age, Aaron Rodgers could still play into the future and force the Packers' hand.
Ooh. All right, I got to come back to that a little bit later. But meanwhile, Ninko, I'm coming to you a little bit later. When will Mac Jones start for the Patriots?
Mac Jones is going to start for the Patriots week 1. And I say that with a heavy involvement of Cam Newton in the offense. So Mac Jones are going to go back in time, run the football, run, 22 personnel, play action pass, tight ends that can catch and run. Patriots are going to go Mac Jones week 1.
Okay, interesting. And Jeff, let me come to you. Will the Steelers regret not taking a lineman in round 1?
I really got to bring it after those two bold predictions, but I'm going to say no, they're not. And here's why. Najee Harris. I don't want to overstate things because I just love the guy's vibe, but I feel like Najee Harris is going to come into that locker room and act like, get the respect of the guys around him, but also perform like a veteran on the field. For some reason, I just have this weird feeling that Najee Harris is going to be an absolute star in the NFL.
I will tell you, I'll take it a step further. Write his name down right now for Rookie of the Year. Despite this, the Steelers are only bringing back one of their starting offensive linemen from last year after Pouncey and Villanueva and others have walked away. But there's two ways of looking at that, because the other way of looking at it is their offensive line was bad last year. So that changed. I think it was you, Jeff, who made that point last week. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So, Dominique, we're going to play a little game here, and we're going to call it First or Worst. If you had to bet your house, your palatial estate there in the Washington, D.C. area, on the Steelers either finishing first or worst in the division, one or the other, which one are you going?
It's hard. I mean, my first instinct was to say worst, but then I thought about it, and I think that it's more likely that they'll go first. They swept the Ravens in the season series last year. They split with the Browns. Again, also they lost to the Browns in the playoffs, but I can't see them being worse than the Bengals. Like, I think the Bengals are an up-and-coming team. They aren't ready yet. That Steelers defense deserves respect, and we've seen what Mike Tomlin is capable of doing. So it's really hard for me to figure out a way that they're going to be last in the division, but it's possible. I could see them beating the Browns and beating the Ravens and finding their place, first place in the division. It's unlikely, but it's more likely than them ending up last, in my view.
Okay, so there's one house on first. How about yours, Nico? Today you're in the Beast's house. He's at Disney World. He's in the Beast Castle today. So are you betting that? Well, priceless. You couldn't even put a value on it. Are you betting on the Steelers to be first or last?
Listen, the only thing that can help the Steelers is some Disney magic, and I don't think it's going to work its way up to Pittsburgh. So I'm going with last on this one. The Bengals are up and coming. Joe Burrow's coming back from his injury. He's got Jamar Chase, the receiving core, T. Higgins also to throw at. So I don't think Cincinnati's going to be last place. We know the Browns are going to be great this year. So I think that you look at the offensive line problems with the Steelers, they might possibly end up in last place. So I'm betting the castle. I'm betting the castle that the Steelers are going to struggle this year.
All right, we got a first and a worst so far. Jeff, break a tie.
I'll say first, and always because Nico always just throws me off with his opinions. I want to go one way, and then he says something. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. And I think that we have to just remember here as well, this division has just been so inconsistent, and it's so hard to determine which team is going to be on top. The Steelers, just as an organization, I know that feels cliche, but I just feel like the stability within that organization will get them several wins in itself. I'll say more likely first.
I'm with you. Look, it's not that complicated. You got a Hall of Fame coach, you got a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you want what should be a great defense. To me, that's the direction to bet the house. Meanwhile, what a weekend it was. Let me recap.